the Egyptians were a very old and stable civilization, and Orwell pictured that with the advent of nuclear bombs. You wouldn't be able to attack, the war would be too horrible, and so all the states just hunker down into small bickering and long-term massive stability. And it kind of came true with Soviet Russia, because 50 years later it was just falling apart, you know, and just fallen. So 50 years is a long time. There were people who were born, lived, and died under the Russian regime, Soviet regime, I should say. Now there was a guy who was attacking Orwell, and he made the imbecile suggestion that some other animal than the pigs might be made to represent the Bolsheviks, right? Why? Because we're being disgenerous to the pigs, or because we're being too generous to the Bolsheviks, or what? So we skip down just a little bit. And after all, your pigs are far more intelligent than the other animals, this guy is criticizing Orwell. And therefore they are the best qualified to run the farm. So why are you saying the pigs shouldn't be running the farm? They should be. They're the best qualified. In fact, there couldn't have been an animal farm at all without them, without the pigs. So that what was needed, someone might argue, was not more communism, but more public-spirited pigs. So, I mean, that's like saying that they had all the communism they needed in Russia, they just needed more public-spirited leaders. The leaders just weren't public-spirited enough, or else it would have worked. Now, Hitchens replies, the fatuity of this was not as extreme as that of the Dial Press in New York, which returned the manuscript with the astonishing comment that animal stories were not a commercial proposition in the United States. How would you like that? You send Animal Farm in to get published, they turn it back, they send it back and say, no thanks, animal stories don't sell here. This at a time when the USA was already the domain of Walt Disney, says Hitchens. And nor was it as poltroonishly cowardly, fine, as the letter from Jonathan Cape, again, which frankly admitted to taking advice from an important official of the Ministry of Information. So, he had a letter from Jonathan Cape, who had taken advice from a government board on Orwell's book, Animal Farm. And he added that the choice of pigs as the ruling caste will no doubt give offense to many people, and particularly to anyone who is a bit touchy, as undoubtedly the Russians are. That's what he had written to Orwell in the letter, he said. And he'd taken advice of the government. You're being inflammatory by using pigs for the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks are touchy. You shouldn't, be so inflammatory. This is just going to cause offense. It's just going to give offense. They've been trying to use offense to bring totalitarianism down on us for a long time, haven't they? These scumbags. Okay, that at least had the merit of candor. Right? At least he's being straightforward about it. He's just coming right out and saying you might offend somebody with your choice of this untasty animal, unsavory animal, something like that. The straightforwardly left-wing Victor Gollancz, G-O-L-L-A-N-C-Z, had of course refused to publish the book on clear ideological grounds. It eventually saw print in a very limited edition, brought out by Secker and Warburg for an advance of £45. How do you like that? Animal Farm was published £45. Nowadays that'd be like $30, $25. It's 50 years ago, but that still wasn't a lot of money back then. Now, Orwell received a letter from a Ukrainian refugee who was working in displaced camp in Germany. So he gets in touch with a community of people who have escaped Eastern Europe, and this Ukrainian suggests that Orwell do a Ukrainian edition of the book, translated into Ukraine. Now I quote Hitchens, "These former camp inmates and soldiers," he said, "had turned against the counter-revolutionary Bonapartism of Stalin and the Russian nationalistic exploitation of the Ukrainian people." So they are they have turned against it, these Ukrainians who have come to Britain and Germany and whatever, and have escaped. Britain's socialist effort, which they take literally, is of foremost interest and importance, they say. How do you like that? They've escaped the beast. They're out of the Stalinist regime. And they want England now to go forward with socialist reforms. You know? As the line from my poem says. It's colleges and universities is the poem. As reason is smothered, what are we hearing? My God, can it be? The people are cheering. And so here's these people have escaped from communism, and they want to bring socialism to Britain. Their situation and their past, causes them to sympathize with Trotskyites, although there are several differences between them. Yeah, there's several, whatever. Yeah, several similarities though too. I mean, how bizarre. When we skip a ways. Thus, the survivors of the Ukrainian famine and the purges and the Nazi invasion and the war and the subsequent extension of Stalinism into Eastern Europe, all that they survived. They were able to decipher the meaning of the pigs without any undue difficulty. Right? I mean, they're from Ukraine, and they see exactly what's going on. They understand the book. They want it to be published in Ukraine. They want it to be translated into their language. And then Hitchens says they managed to understand the pigs without any undue difficulty, a task of interpretation that had defeated conservatism's most deft and subtle literary critic, the guy who had said that he should use a different animal. The Ukrainians understood it, but this extremely intelligent, well-known writer in Britain had a less profound understanding than these escaped Ukrainian ex-slaves. Skipping a ways. In a passage of extreme prescience, extraordinary for 1946, when the prestige of Stalin in the West was at its zenith, Orwell wrote in 1946, "It is too early to say in just what way the Russian regime will destroy itself. But at any rate, the Russian regime will either democratize itself or it will perish. The huge, invincible, everlasting slave empire of which Burnham appears to dream," from a quote we skipped there, "will not be established, or if established will not endure, because slavery is no longer a stable basis for human society." Now, from 46 to 90, that's quite a ways for it to endure. It's another 40 years, 45 years, however you go. And we know, and here's how Hitchens, then it's the end of that quote there from Orwell, and Hitchens says, "In the event, as we know, the attempt at democratization was the proximate cause of the regime's demise." And the two words that we know from that are glasnost and perestroika. It's opening up and truthfulness, I think it's the translations of those. Let me skip a page. Late in the 1940s, a number of formerly pacifist intellectuals actually proposed a preventative nuclear war with the USSR. Among these, if you recognize any of these names, Bertrand Russell, Orwell's co-editor at Polemic, and John Middleton Murray, the ex-husband of Catherine Mansfield and Orwell's former literary patron at the Adelphi. Whatever, nothing of theirs sinks in. They thought that the temporary Western advantage in nuclear armaments should be employed to coerce or destroy the Russian bear. Orwell would have none of this. I thought that was extremely interesting that people like Bertrand Russell thought that we should go ahead and use our nuclear superiority quick as we can. They hadn't seen enough yet. And Orwell would have none of it. I don't know why. I mean, I've read this book here, but I don't know why Orwell. He'd been through the intense battles over Spain and Munich. I mean, what does that have to do with it? So he had seen horrors. The fact that he had seen horrors up close should mean that he's willing to do something to destroy the source of them. You would think he should be willing to save all those people from their slavish lives.